Yes, guys, what's happening? Welcome back to Chelsea Fan TV. Welcome to another episode of the Blue Balls podcast. Kev will be joining shortly, and Alex, unfortunately, isn't available this week. His internet's gone down, so he will be missing this episode. But I am joined by Scott. How we doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, not doing too bad. Doing all right. Tried to ignore all the Chelsea stuff at the moment, but there comes an inevitability with it at times that you have to talk about things. But yeah, not been too bad outside of that. Yourself?
No, good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Good stuff. By the way, guys, make sure you smashing the like, subscribe if you're new around here. Get involved in the chat as well. We'll try and get to as many of your comments as possible. We'll go through the ownership stuff. We'll go through Maresca. That sounded a bit weird, but we'll go through the Maresca stuff. And we will obviously look ahead to the Aston Villa game as well. Mate, I can't remember when I last spoke to you, but what are your thoughts on the whole protest situation? How are you feeling about it? Do you think it's coming from a good place? Do you think now's the right time? Where are you standing with it all?
I think it's been weird. I think where I stand on it currently, after everything that's happened this week, it has turned into a farce. I think it started in a good place. I think the people who organised it had good intentions and still have good intentions. I don't think they're the ones that have ultimately turned it into what it's become. The timing, I think, is weird because I think had we beaten Brighton in both games, this wouldn't be happening. And yeah, like I said, I think, and I assume we'll touch on it in regards to the interview that happened on TalkSport, but yeah, I think that has ultimately ruined it a little bit, and the other tweets and whatnot that happen about it and about the chants that are going to go on and stuff like that. And yeah, as I said, I think it's something that could have good positive attitude. I mentioned this on the stream I did with Alex the other day, where it's like it could be something positive and have a good impact, but that was if everyone was united and everyone was going to treat it as it should have been treated. And now I think it's, as I said, turned into a bit of a farce.
Mate, you make a good point, Rug. I mentioned this the other day. The timing. Look, is there ever a right time? Maybe not. But the timing feels a little bit strange because these issues surrounding the ownership haven't just appeared because we've won two matches in the last 9. They were there when we were second in the table. They were there in the summer. They were there last season. They've pretty much been there for the last almost 3 years. So I look at it and I agree with you. It's like if we'd beaten Brighton in both those games, if we were, say, 3rd or 4th, which we perhaps probably should be, then is this really happening? And that's where you've got to question people's, not like, there may be people's intentions behind this, because actually, in my opinion, what's more powerful is doing that when we're second in the league, when we're doing well, when we're winning matches, because that, for me, sends a stronger message. Whether this is the intention or not, and I don't believe it is, but optically, when you look at it from the outside in, it looks like, oh, we're on a bad run. The fan base want the ownership out. That's how it looks. And that optically doesn't look great. And it makes you come across as a bit spoiled. It makes you come across as a bit entitled. When the reality is, a lot of Chelsea fans have actually got genuine concerns about the ownership, good points and points that should be raised, and a message that needs to be got across. But it just feels like it's reactive rather than maybe proactive. And I think you're spot on when you say, would this have happened if we were on a better run of form? I don't know if it would. What happens if we beat Aston Villa on Saturday? I'm not saying we will, but if we beat Aston Villa on Saturday, is that going to change people's minds about whether they turn up on the Tuesday or not?
I 100% agree, and I think if we I looked at this the other day. Depending on if we beat Villa, and again, I don't think we will, but if we beat Villa, and certain other results go our way, we'll be 4th, 1 point behind Forest. So it's like at that point, I think if that happens, and again, I don't think it will, but let's just say it does, I think all of a sudden less people are inclined to turn up to this protest, and ultimately that's the issue for me because. Not all of these people, but a lot of the people that are going to be turning up are going to be the same Chelsea fans that in the summer talked about, oh, we've got so much good depth because we brought in the likes of Felix and we've got Nkunku now for a full season who's not injured. And we've got Lavia now back fully fit and we've got this player and we've got that player and whoever. They were the same fans singing, we've got our Chelsea back 2 months ago.
Yeah.
when we were second in the table, and ultimately, I think like recency bias in football, I think is massive, and I think we've seen that this season, and we've seen that with Chelsea in general. Like you said, these issues were here when we were second, but no one cared because we were second, and we were in a title challenge apparently. So yeah, and unfortunately that's the case. So I think if we do beat Villa, we'll probably be in a position where like not many, like you'll still get people turn up 100%, but I think it'll be the people that either you'll get some people that really still care about this and want to have a good message come across to the owners, and you'll just get the people who just want to like throw abuse and all the rest of it and do the usual stupid stuff that gets Chelsea in trouble and in the media, but they don't seem to care, unfortunately.
My problem with it is, right, look, I support I support it. I'm behind it. I think fans need to voice their dissatisfaction because there are a lot of things that are going on at the club right now which aren't right, which aren't acceptable, which are concerning, and fans absolutely should voice that. My problem with my issues surrounding it is that I'm sure there are people with good intentions behind it, people with good intentions that will attend. The other issue with it is, though, unfortunately for me, it feels like a lot of people are getting behind this to serve their own agendas. A lot of this feels very agenda driven. I'm not going to name names. Everyone knows who we're talking about. Everyone knows the people involved. But a lot of it also feels like this is not really wanting it for the benefit of the football club. This is more people wanting this to prove that to sort of validate their agendas. And that's for me is where a lot of this could potentially fall down, is where you haven't got everyone in it for the right reason. Some people will genuinely be in it because they want change and they want what's best for the football club, and other people are in it because it serves their agenda well. And that for me is a problem.
100%, and I think you can see that with the interview that happened the other day. I assume most people have seen it now. If you haven't, don't watch it. Like, save yourself 10.5 minutes. Like, it's pointless watching it. I can sum it up in a few sentences. There was talk about we're in debt of 140 million, but as far as I can tell, there's nothing to corroborate that. The only debt we're in is we're not even in any debt. The only debt that's associated with these owners is 500 million, which they put against their own name. It has nothing to do with the club. That debt apparently is going to bankrupt us. It's not the reason the protest is happening is nothing to do with the on-pitch stuff, but we're not happy with the model, which is on the pitch stuff. And then he gets cooked by Simon Jordan for like the rest of it. That's the sum total of what it is. And ultimately, like I could clown on that interview and what happened and the guy that went on there, like not because he went on there, but because he went on there with no idea of what he was saying till the cows come home. But I think the bigger point is you've got people going to this protest with no idea why they're going. They just dislike the owners.
Yeah.
Like, they don't know why they go. They don't know why they're protesting. They don't know why they're going. They don't know what the reasons are that the owners are doing bad. They just dislike the owners for whatever reason that may be. Some of you may be able to allude. But yeah, and then they're protesting because of that. That's bad. That's not the right reason to protest. You protest because you have a clear message and you have a clear goal in mind, which should be for these guys to change the model, to go more towards kind of what they did the summer they came in. Obviously, not all those signings hit, but geared more towards you get a little bit of youth in Fofana and Carney, and you get a bit of the experience in Koulibaly, Sterling, etc. A blend. That should be more what it's geared towards. Not this idea of you can get them out because they cannot leave. Like, I'm yet to see any proof that they can.
Mate,
and then
I was on here the other night, right? And I'm all for constructive debate, no problem. If you're going to make a point, bring me the evidence of that to back that point up.
100%.
No issue. If I've not seen that evidence, then please bring it to my attention. Every time someone comes to me and says, "Oh, they can sell," all I say is, "Where's the evidence?" And I'm yet to see anyone provide any evidence that they can sell. But even if whether they can or can't sell is almost irrelevant at this point, because do you really think they're going to sell after 3 years? Do you really think that? And that's not a defeatist attitude, as some people have tried to say it is. It is being realistic. I always give examples of Arsenal, Man United, Tottenham, 3 fan bases who do not like their ownership, and 3 fan bases that have tried numerous protests over the years that have fallen on deaf ears and haven't done anything. So why do some Chelsea fans legitimately believe that one like a few protests is going to force these billionaires to sell up. It's not. It can put pressure on if done in the right way, and if a united message is sent with everyone on the same page, it can put pressure on the ownership to maybe make some change, which is what we should be striving for. But if your end goal is hatred of the ownership and wanting to remove the ownership, you're going to be bitterly disappointed because it's not happening anytime soon.
I agree, and it's old man shouting at clouds. Like, you're wasting your breath, and this is why I say you've got to go in there with a clear idea and a clear plan of what you want to do. And even if you want the owners out and you're going to use the Clearlake out motto, whatever it is, right? That can work if your goal of is ultimately just to affect change, right? Even if the owners don't leave, that's fine as long as they change, because then that can work. You can maybe get them to change. We saw with Potter, they ultimately buckled because of fan criticism. That's why Potter got sacked when he did.
Yeah,
because otherwise he would have lasted the whole season. And so you could affect change, but like we said, that there's people that just want to go there to push agendas. There's people that want to go there to spew rubbish and just spew nonsense. And ultimately, the people it hurts are the people that want what's best for this club, in a sense of and they want to protest correctly, and they ultimately just want the club to be successful. And I think what's weird to me is I think everyone wants that. It's just, unfortunately, as is in every fan base, you just have a number of people who just want to make it as difficult as possible. And as I said, I just think ultimately what this protest has turned into is a farce.
yeah.
And the other thing that I wonder is, let's say the protest goes on for the whole 2 hours before the game.
There's no chance it lasting 2 hours.
I don't think they will either.
I can't see it. I could be wrong, but I'd be very surprised.
I can't see it either. But let's say it does, right? What happens when we go to play Southampton and we inevitably score? Because I think, I know we're bad. Southampton are the worst team in the league, comfortably. They are terrible. What happens if we score? Does this all now get forgotten?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, right? Because what you want to do is whatever you think of the players, whatever you think of the team. This is a young and experienced team, right? We need to be behind the team, and we need to support the team, and we need to cheer them on, because having a toxic atmosphere in the stands is not going to help on-pitch performance, especially when we're already struggling as it is. So my problem with B is, yes, by all means, protest, voice your opinions outside the ground. But then when you go into the ground, get behind the team and support the team. If you want to, chant Roman Abramovich, if you want to chant, we want our choice, but whatever, fine. But do not make it a difficult atmosphere for these players to play in. Now, will the people that turn up leave their protest thoughts outside the stadium and get into the stadium and 100% be behind the team? I can't sit here and confidently say that that's going to happen. And in terms of a turnout, look, I hope there's a decent turnout, because it needs a decent turnout. And I'm sure you've seen there's a lot of people talking online, a lot of people talking on social media and whatnot. That's the easy part, by the way. How many people, when the time actually comes and you've got an opportunity to try and drive some change and get the wheels in motion, how many people are actually going to back what they're saying? And if they can turn up, will turn up? Because I'm not sure as many people will turn up, unfortunately, as are giving it the big one online.
I think the number at the moment that I've seen reported is 200. But I don't know. They might turn up.
That number. How are they getting? How are they sort of?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't read the article, I'll be honest. But wait a second. Yeah, I didn't read the article, but I did see I'd the headline was that near 200 people. Someone that I'm in a group chat with said that they were taking bets on whether it's under 100 people, which honestly, I'm looking at the Ricketts one that Matisse organized, and that was 50 to 100 people. So yeah, I don't know. I have no idea how many people turn up. as I said, I don't even know if it's going to make a difference. I think it will, and I don't think it not making a difference should deter people. And ultimately, I'm not even saying that it shouldn't go ahead. I think it should, but for the right reasons. But yeah, I'm just, like I said, after this past week that's gone on all the nonsense that's happened, I'm just so skeptical about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's lost a lot of credibility over the past few days. And my biggest worry is that after obviously the incident on Talksport, there's probably going to be media there. My biggest worry is that once again, you're going to have misinformed fans going on national media and saying more, not necessarily the same things that were said on Talksport, but are going to be not there with a clear and concise point, coming up with half truths, facts with no evidence, and making the fan base look stupid. And that is not what you want. If people are going to go and speak to the media, if the media are there, you actually need to have someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Because if you embarrass yourself in front of the media, not only do you embarrass the fan base and make the fan base look stupid, you discredit the protest entirely, and you give the media a stick to beat the fans with and kind of flip it as the fans are the problem rather than the ownership. So whilst the intentions are good and whilst I support it and whilst I'll be there myself, I can't sit here and say that I'm not concerned about potentially what might happen.
No, I agree, and I think you make a good point about like the media. I think the media would have been there regardless, but I agree after the Talksport thing, I think they're going to be there. Like, it's going to be an even stronger presence than I think there was or was going to be. And yeah, like the whole part of the reason the Ricketts one worked is because you had someone in Matisse who is able, partly because of what he does as a job, like he has to be able to kind of do that, but be able to clearly and concisely get his point across as to why this is bad, why this isn't going to work, why this shouldn't happen. Instead of that for this one, like we should have had, because the Ricketts one was like a fairly easy thing to break down, and yet it was still done in a concise way. This is a harder thing to like explain, especially like you look at the Talksport thing, for example, like you've got Jim and Simon because like from their eyes, if it's an on the pitch thing, we're just outside the top four. We were fourth. We were second a couple months ago. We had Chelsea fans singing we've got our Chelsea back, and ultimately this comes back to what we mentioned earlier about timing. It's a bit odd to some people if they don't follow Chelsea and they're not really keeping up with Chelsea like that, and they haven't really been for the past like 3 years or whatever. So you then have to explain it clearly. But it's that didn't happen. Probably won't happen at all. And yeah, and ultimately that's going to backfire on Chelsea. I think the other thing that's going to backfire on Chelsea, I don't know if you've seen the tweets about the chants that are going to happen, some of them. If some of those chants happen, it just perpetuates this idea that Chelsea's full of bigots.
Well, but do you know what the mad thing is, though, is that's probably what some people's intentions are. And as soon as you do that, like it doesn't even matter what nationality they are, even if they were French, Japanese, Chinese, whatever. If this model was being implemented, it would be a problem. It's nothing to do with the fact that they're American. For some people, that might be an issue, and that's a separate thing that we don't need to go into. But you know, this is nothing to do with them being American. This is all to do with the way that the club's being run and the way that the club is being kind of stripped of any resemblance of what it used to be. So yeah, we have to wait and see what happens. Look, there's good intentions behind it. It is descending into a little bit of a farce. But all we can do is hope for the best. If you're genuinely interested in trying to drive some change, then if you can turn up, make sure you do turn up, but be respectful, be peaceful about the way you protest. And if you're going to speak to anyone, make sure you actually know what you're saying, or just don't speak to anyone, because otherwise we will end up coming across looking like absolute idiots. But there we are. In terms of moving away from the protest, mate, in terms of, I'm sure you've seen it, what are your thoughts on the club, obviously fully backing Maresca? I think we had Jonathan Goldstein, who's a board member, saying he's 100% going to be here for the rest of the season. That's obviously absolutely the right thing to say. In terms of, whether you agree with him saying, oh, he's doing a really good job. I think that's more open for debate personally. But, he's 100% see out the season. He's clearly done a great job in bringing the team together, bringing the talent through, and we're very optimistic for the rest of the season. I mean, at least he's he's speaking publicly. At least it's good to hear from someone from the board whether you agree with the message or not. But I mean, is it a concern, the message from inside the club is they think that he's doing a really good job? Does that highlight part of the issue here?
No, because I think he is. I've said this before to Alex and others. I think when you consider the nonsense that's gone on above him this season, I think he's done a better job than most of us realise in terms of keeping us where we are. I think he should see out the rest of the season. I think that's the good message to give, and I think that's the message they've been consistent with every manager. Like I said, Potter would have stayed the whole season if fans hadn't voiced their displeasure at him. Poch stayed the whole season despite the fact that we were terrible for 30, whatever it was, 33 game weeks or whatever it was in a season. So I think he should stay the rest of the season. I don't really think there's any point changing now, not only because I don't know who you'd get at this point in the season, but also I just don't trust, I refuse to allow these sporting directors to be given another manager to hire, whether it's interim or not. And so I think ultimately that's the good message to give. And I think, especially in public, I think that's the right message to give. Behind the scenes, we may hear something like it may be something different, and I don't think we'll ever really hear it. At least not now, maybe a few years down the line. But yeah, I think that's the right message to give. And ultimately, I think he has to be the one at this point because the owners and sporting directors have failed with January. Ultimately, they've failed. He and the players, but more specifically him, because of the issues we have with the squad in terms of mentality and whatnot, he is ultimately what's going to drive the turnaround, if a turnaround indeed happens. Whether that turnaround happens, as I said, remains to be seen, but hopefully it can.
Yeah, look, whether this is true or not, people moaning about these comments, you're not going to get someone from the club coming out in public saying he's not doing a good job. That just is very unlikely to happen. Look, I think given the circumstances, he's not doing a bad job. Could he be doing a better job? Yes, absolutely. Of course, he could be doing a better job. It's absolutely right that he's here for the rest of the season. I think he should, personally, for me, he should be here next season, regardless of where we finish or what happens. Because one, as you said, I don't trust these directors to pick another manager, and they're seemingly untouchable right now. Secondly, you can imagine the short list of potential managers that we would have. If it was Frank, Maresca, and Kieran McKenna last summer, I wouldn't be surprised to see Liam Rossignol at Strasbourg on the shortlist, Frank Lampard, because he's won a few games at Coventry now, and maybe McKenna on the shortlist again if Ipswich go down. So these people that say, oh, the manager needs to go, is like, the only way I'd accept the manager going, two things, right? One, both of them are not going to happen. If you were guaranteed to get an elite manager come in, I would accept Maresca going. And if Maresca going meant the directors went as well, I would reluctantly accept that. But unfortunately, both those things aren't going to happen. But what's interesting, mate, I think we both agree that the gaffer should still be here next season regardless. If we do miss out on the Champions League and they keep him, can you understand when people say maybe they're kind of flip-flopping a little bit, maybe they're purely based on the fact that a massive factor of why Pochettino went was because we missed out on the Champions League? Can you then, from an ownership perspective, 12 months later say, oh, we've missed out on the Champions League again, and we would have finished sixth probably, if that means missing out on the Champions League, we'll probably come sixth. We finish in the same position. Is it really that much of a better season than last season? From a club point of view, do you get where I'm coming from? You sacked a manager for not finishing in the top four, but then 12 months later, the same thing happens and he stays.
Yeah, no, 100%. The optics are bad, but I also don't think they sacked Poch because he didn't finish in the top four. I think what's happening this season and the comments made by Maresca and everything are evident of that. I think that most of Pochettino's sacking came down to how he became at the end. I think if he hadn't made the comments he'd made at the end, where he started to speak out, started to voice his displeasure, I think he would still be here this season. I think that's the only, unless he decided to walk, I don't think they'd have sacked him. I think they sacked him because he became difficult to work with and less agreeable, and ultimately that's what they want. We saw that with Tuchel as well, despite the other alleged stuff he may have done. And so yeah, like it's, as I said, it's not good optics if they finish outside the top four. But I think my thing on Maresca is if we finish outside the top four, my stance on him would be dependent on what it's because of. If we miss out on top four because we didn't score enough goals, like we're losing games because we didn't score enough goals, or because of defensive mistakes, I don't blame Maresca for that. Like, if we miss out on top four because of Robert Sanchez, I blame him because he picks him every week. So it comes down to that. It's really fine margins at this moment in time, but so much of the blame of where we're going to finish this season ultimately comes down to the owners and the sporting directors. If we finish outside the top four or finish outside Champions League, because at this rate we might get fifth, and that might be enough.
Yeah, I hope so, but the issues are right. Is that obviously 3 years in now, to get Champions League football, we need to finish above one of Bournemouth or Forest. Really, we need to finish above two. Yeah, Bournemouth or Forest. We've got to finish above one of them, and maybe we've got to finish above Newcastle as well. But look, regardless of the way the squad's been put together, regardless of the injuries we've got right now, what we've got at our disposal, if we can't finish above a Forest or a Bournemouth 3 years into this project, with the amount of money invested, with the talent we do have at our disposal, that's a big concern. And I said it the other night, and maybe it was a bit strong, but do you deserve to be here if you cannot finish above a Bournemouth or a Nottingham Forest as Chelsea Football Club?
Probably not, but again, I think it like I said, it's such a fine line, and there's so much context for me that has to go in, because if we had our full strength team, or we had a striker playing, like if there were certain things in place where it's like, okay, cool, there are no excuses. But like, I'm watching Nkunku play at striker every week and look terrible, or I'm watching Cole Palmer play as a false nine and look terrible with Nkunku in the 10, and it's not working. And it's like, that's not on Maresca. That's simply not on him. I'm watching Neto put crosses into no one because no one's anticipating it, because no one's on the same wavelength he is, because no one in the team is really used to playing with a guy like that who wants to whip crosses in like that. Again, so a little bit on that on Maresca from a chemistry point of view, but it's more on just the way the team's put together. So it's just stuff like that where it's like, yes, he needs to do better 100%. And like, you look at the game against Brighton, for example, is just like a small case study where it's like, for all the problems that we are having with injuries and missing certain profiles, that doesn't excuse how slow we are in build-up. That doesn't excuse how just lackluster we are at times in terms of certain players not playing and not being up for it and whatnot. But yeah, I just think he's been given terrible tools to work with in some instances.
No, look, I absolutely agree that, the tools that he's been given aren't the best. But having said that, I think we can both sit here and agree that the tools that have been given are better to finish above one of Forest or Bournemouth, or both. Look, if the fact that we're sitting here, like at the start of the season, right, no one would have said, "Oh, do we think we could finish above Bournemouth and Forest?" That would have been almost a guarantee and a cert. We should finish above these teams. I guess it highlights kind of where we are right now.
I'll be real. Just sorry to interrupt. I don't know, but just from the Bournemouth perspective, let's not even focus on Forest.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that Bournemouth team, right? They like, take out I'm going to go from what we've played most of the season playing. Okay, they've got a better keeper than us, than our starting keeper who started most. Like, that was better than Sanchez, unfortunately. Most of the Chelsea fan base would take both of their centre backs. Their midfield isn't better. Our midfield is miles better, and you can see it every week. In terms of their attack, I'm not going to say it's better. I think Semenyo is better than most of our attackers. But again, I think that's just different profiles. But I think the biggest issue is, and some of this is on Maresca as well, like I said, I think it's like a stylistic thing where, like, you've got a manager who has a very rigid style, especially in terms of the attack and the attackers he likes to use. Very rigid style. And you've got one manager who's really flexible and is able to just kind of, he puts the players in a position where, like, they could be playing that position. They've got Uatara playing striker who's a winger, and it works.
Yeah.
And it's just like, because they have a manager who's not really set to one style, it's more just quite high intensity, very kind of Ange-like, but not so married to it as Ange is. And he just puts players in a position where it's like, just go and play, sort of thing. And that means he can work with a Cliver or a Ouattara or a Brooks or a whoever, right? Whereas we've got a manager who he needs a specific profile of player, and this just comes back to like how you recruit and everything. But that's why I say I think I'd say their team, especially in certain areas, is actually a lot closer than ours or better than ours. And I just think their manager is more suited to that squad than ours is. And I think that's ultimately where it comes down to it.
I mean, it is mad, isn't it, that we're sort of comparing Chelsea and Bournemouth at the moment. I mean, look, Bournemouth have done a brilliant job, by the way, but I think it more highlights how bad a job that we've done. You know, I'm not going to knock the owners because for investment, they've absolutely invested. I think the allocation of funds has been very, very poor. To invest the amount of money we've invested, and we've spoken about this before, to have no top goalkeeper, no top centre back, no centre forward, and arguably probably still needing a number 6, like that's really bad. And then the way that the team's been put together, you sign wingers like Pedro Neto, who's known for his crossing ability, known for putting balls in the box, and you've got no forward in there to take advantage of balls into the box. Like, the team has been put together. It seems like that squad's been put together with no thought about whether it's going to work or not. It's just basically
100%.
signed a load of players who play a way that the club wants to play, but actually there's been no thought given to whether they would make a good team.
Oh, no, 100%. And just on the attacker thing, like, we have one attacker in our entire squad that has had a league season scoring, like, goal scoring record of like 20 plus goals, and that's Cole Palmer. That was last year.
Yeah.
Like, outside of him, Sancho's best ever goal scoring season was 17. That was in the Bundesliga like 4 years ago when he was playing with Haaland. Maresca I assume was when he was at PSV.
Must have been, yeah. He's got 7 goals this season, but yeah, must have been PSV.
I think he got double digits, but it definitely wasn't 20. Jackson's best ever is 14 last season. Mudryk, I'm not even going to comment on. Neto's is 5. I don't even know if he's ever completed a league season. Like, and this is ultimately what we're working with. And it's like, you don't always need a 20 plus goal scorer in like all the time. But if you've got no one else to score goals.
That's exactly it. Like, if you've got no one else scoring goals, then you do need that. But if you can spread the goals around, you don't necessarily need that. Maybe you can have a striker that will score you 15 goals, but have you got wide players that will chip in with 10, like, and a number 10 that might get you 10 to 15 as well? In theory, I think a lot of us thought we had that. But the reality is, there's really only one guy that's not a guarantee for goals, but you're still, with over £1 billion invested in the squad, we are still basically Cole Palmer or bust. If Palmer plays well, we'll probably win. If he doesn't play well, we won't win. And to still be in that situation with the amount of money invested is just crazy.
I know it is, and do you know what's nuts? I said this after the Brighton game because I looked into it. Our second top goal scorer now in the squad is Enzo Fernandez on 3.
Oh, well, after Jackson's 9.
Yeah. No, but in terms of who's fit, like, he's 4th.
In terms of who's fit.
Yes, he's our 4th top goal scorer this season. Because of Jackson and Noni's injuries, he is now currently our second top goal scorer with 3 in our squad. So like you just mentioned, if it's not Palmer, it's no one. As much as people dislike Noni, he has more goals this season, more league goals than Nkunku, Neto, and Sancho combined.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, when you like, I don't understand why there's just no goals in the team. And you look at the players that we've got, there should be loads of goals now. He was scoring a lot of goals earlier in the season. And I just look at it and I think, what's changed from earlier in the season where we were scoring a lot of goals to now? Now, I know we've got players missing and we've got injuries now, but I mean, mate, what do you put it down to? Because we were scoring loads of goals and now we're getting to a point where we can't even have a shot on target in 90 minutes.
I put it down to Jackson's form, because if you actually look at it, like I said, Palmer has 13 this season, I think, or 14. Jackson has 9.
Yeah. And then
he has 14.
7 after that, yeah.
Yeah, Jackson has 9, Madueke has 7. And it's like, so and Madueke didn't really start, like, he had the 3 against Wolves and he got 1 against Forest, maybe, or someone, and they didn't really score for a while. So, like, outside of Jackson and Palmer, it was no one really scoring consistently. And I think, again, it comes down to profiles. You've got our 2 wingers, the way we attack, our 2 wingers are touchline wingers, so they're very wide. So they're not really going to get into goal scoring opportunities regularly. So you're relying on Jackson and the 2 10s. One of the 10s is Enzo, who, again, is not really a goal scorer. Like, he likes to be outside the box and stuff like that. He's not really a box crasher. And it's the same with Palmer. Palmer has scored a lot of goals and he can do that, but it's not really his game. So then you need a number 9 who is going to get you 20, 25 league goals a season, which we don't have. And I think that's obvious. I thought Jackson maybe could get there, but I think we've seen that even before the injury, he probably wasn't going to get there. And definitely isn't going to get there now. And also, when this comes down to it, it's like, you either need, we've seen it before, to be at the very top of this league and competing in and around that place, you need either multiple 15 plus goal scorers, like City had when they won the league. I think they had about 4 players when they didn't have a number 9 after they sold Aguero. They had about 4 players on 15 plus. Or you need someone who is going to score you 20, 25, maybe even if they're incredible 30 league goals. Because otherwise, you're not competing. You're down with your Bournemouths and your Brightons and your Fulhams, etc.
And that's why I worry about the summer. And you look at who we might bring in, whether it's at Delap or whatever it is. Delap's not straight away anyway. Delap's not going to get you 15, 20 goals. I know he's got 10 or 11 goals in this Ipswich team, which is pretty good. And you know what? Maybe he could get you 20 goals. But like, you look, I'm just thinking, if Delap comes in the summer, I'm not saying he is, but that's perhaps the most likely one at this stage. For me, that still doesn't really solve major goal scoring issues. It'll get us a few more goals, but it's not going to get the wingers scoring more. And that's why, again, I look at the way that the squad's been put together. You sign Neto, you sign Sancho, you sign Madueke, you sign, obviously, Mudrik's obviously out of the picture at the moment. Guys that across their careers to date are not really prolific goal scorers. Now, I'm not saying that every winger you get has to be a goal scoring winger. But if you are putting a squad together with 4 wingers in there, at least 2 of those bare minimum need to be goal scoring wingers. I don't think we can say a single one of our wingers is a goal-scoring winger. And the one who's got the most goal-scoring instinct is Madueke, and he's probably the one that gets criticised the most.
100%. I think he's the only one who is. I think he is a goal-scoring winger, primarily. But I agree with you. And I'm just looking, like, on the point of the summer, I think this is why the January window was even more crucial than people realise. We've got the Club World Cup. Let's say we get to the final. I don't think we do. If we get to the final, that's the 13th of July. We have a month at that point until the season starts on August 16th. So let's assume you give the guys some time off because they're going to need it if they've gone straight from finishing a season in May. Unless you're going to give them 2 weeks in May to then bring them back to start training them again in June when the Club World Cup starts.
It's going to go straight through, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's assume you don't get some time off, or maybe you get, a week or a couple of days between May and June. You get a week, maybe 2. That's 2 weeks worth of preseason. Even if we get a striker, let's just say we actually do the window we need to do in the summer in terms of you get Osimhen, you get a proper centre-back or whoever. When are these guys going to have time to integrate themselves with the squad? It's more than likely they're spending the first couple of weeks on the bench.
Yeah, of course they are.
They integrate themselves in. And that's stupid. Like, that's daft, because if you're signing guys that are meant to improve the first team, going into the new season with them on the bench is daft, because you're just handicapping yourself.
The Club World Cup's going to be a problem. I don't mean a problem in terms. Look, I think it's a good idea. They've revamped it and whatnot, and it's much better than what it used to be. I think this will be a good tournament, but like, you've got to question sort of how we're going to cope with it, because right now the squad is threadbare. Joao Felix is going to come back for it. Vega will obviously come back from loans. All the guys will come back from their loan spells in time for this, but do we really want to be playing players that actively don't want to be at the football club in this tournament? You know, we're going to be running on fumes with the current squad that is going to end the season. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we picked up several injuries over the course of the Club World Cup and started the new season with players on the treatment table. It's a real spanner in the works, and it almost forces you a little bit to get your recruitment done early because you want to get those players in through the door to play in the Club World Cup.
But the thing is, we can't because the Club World Cup is really weird because I don't quite know how the registration works yet because I'm confused about the loans as well. The Club World Cup starts the day before the window opens.
Yeah.
So we can't even sign anyone unless the registration is open. So like you don't have to register anyone for it, which if that's the case, it's fine because we can just we can just sign someone and bring him over and then he joins the squad and trains while also playing in the Club World Cup, and that'll just be a weird dynamic. But loans typically end on June 30th or July 1st. If that's still the case, this is the other side of the Club World Cup where, like I said, we may not get to the final. If we get knocked out early, because like I think we get past the group, with the way we're playing, we probably don't make it much past that. Like I'd honestly back a Palmeiras or a Botafogo or someone like that to beat us right now.
Oh yeah, currently.
If that happens, and what I'm saying about the loans is true, these guys won't even get to play in the Club World Cup because by the time they get back, we'll be out. So like, yeah, I find it very weird. Yeah, I'm just finding it very weird at the moment. With the whole like with it and how it works and everything, and even if these guys can come back and play, I think trying to bring these guys back and integrate them again straight from coming back it just seems so daft. It just seems like ultimately like the protest. Like I said, it's a bit of a farce. Like the way we're doing this and the way we're trying to put it all together.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. The more you sort of take a deep dive into it, like the more you realize how badly the squad's actually been put together. And I don't mean in terms of lack of talent. I just means in a way that it's been put together and the way that the squad lacks balance, the way that there's still so many holes in it. Like, look at the January. I don't want to keep banging on about the January window, but you judge ownerships by the transfer windows, by the investments they make, by the decisions that they make. These last two transfer windows, and I'm going to include the summer as well, have been absolutely shocking, absolutely terrible. The January window especially is probably one of the worst windows that we've had in a long time, and we're punished for not doing anything because now we're in a situation where we've got no fit strikers, we've got 2 fit senior wingers, and we're running players into the ground. And the midfield cover we did sign, which we didn't actually need to because we recalled someone from loan. But the midfield cover we did sign, the managers actively come out and said, don't expect him to play very much. So we've signed someone that actually hasn't even solved a problem that we had.
No. And yeah, like by the way, I think all of our January windows have been underwhelming to terrible. I think even the first one, like if you take Santos and Enzo out of that January,
all them players like 6 or 7. Maresca was in there, Mudryk was in there.
I was gonna say
Badia Shield. There was loads, wasn't there?
The only 2 wins in that whole window is Santos, who hasn't played a minute outside of preseason for this football club, and Enzo, who has only become a win pretty much this season. And really from about a third of the way through the season onwards. Madueke is still is 50-50. Mudryk's an L. Badia Shield at this point is an L, I think. We signed some youth players. Like it was terrible, and then we've had 2 January windows of nothing preceding that. So yeah, it's been awful.
Yeah.
By the way, I just had a look on the loan thing, and yeah, the loans all end on January 30th.
No, June 30th.
Sorry, June 30th. Excuse me. So they'll come back just after the group stage ends, about a week after the group stage ends.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, sort of moving more to the football side of things. Obviously, we've got the game against Villa on Saturday. Tough game. Rightfully, fans calling for Maresca to change things up, try something different. You look at what we've actually got available. There's not much difference he can do. Pretty much from an attacking standpoint, the only change he can really make is maybe playing a Neto or a Sancho as a false 9 and bringing in Tyreek George. Other than that, we literally can't change anything. I mean, how much of a concern is that we're really having to pretty much just play with what we've got and hope something changes.
It's very bad, but this is the hand we've been dealt, and well, not even the hand we've been dealt. This is the hand we've dealt ourselves. The fact we have to see Nkunku and Palmer play again together, and it is their faults with what I'm about to say, but it's also not really their faults. They just don't work together. Like, it's quite clear they don't work together. Nkunku doesn't work as a 9. Palmer doesn't work as a false 9. That just doesn't work. But that has to happen again because we have no one else unless he wants to put Shim Waker up there. Santos's loan has officially not Santos. Washington's loan to Santos has officially been announced, so he's gone. Unless you want to start, as I said, Mweka or Stutter or something, like it's Nkunku again. The wingers are going to be the same again, unless you want to start George in his first league game. But as decent as he did when he came on against Brighton, I would find that not doing that away to Villa. Like, again, it's just a bit weird.
The only reason why I'd be potentially for it is purely because Sancho's been so bad recently.
He's not even the one I'd take out, I'll be honest.
But for me personally, I would try Neto down the middle, just something different. Put Neto down the middle, play Nkunku as a 10, shift Palmer to the right, and play George on the left.
No, do you know what I'd do, actually? I would put, because this wouldn't be great, but I have at least seen it work at another club. I'd put Sancho false 9. It happened in pre-season for United last summer. It looked, or was it this summer, I think? It looked good. Again, it was pre-season, but it's better than nothing. And like, I just can't see Nkunku play. I don't want to see Nkunku play striker.
No.
And like you said, it means Neto plays on the left, which I think he was good against Brighton. He was actually decent on the left before he went over to the right. George starting, I think, would be a positive just because I think he would be more direct and he might actually do something. The fact we're pinning our hopes on George says a lot about where our football club is at. And then ultimately, I don't think it matters who the centre-back partnership is. It should be Chalobah and Tosin. But I think we saw against Brighton in the Cup, they still have their issues together. It should be James starting at right back.
Yeah.
But ultimately, and it should be Jorgensen in goal again. But ultimately, like, I don't think it's the same conversation I had up before the Brighton game in the Cup, in the league, where it's like, ultimately, all these changes don't really matter because they're not like they're not going to change anything. We're about to face an Aston Villa side that aren't great at the back, are going to have to play a centre-back partnership of like Mings and maybe Kamara, I think, or if Konsa's fit, Mings and Konsa.
The Sassy can't play either because of the loan deal.
No. Rashford will probably score because he loves a goal against us. But yeah, it's just, it's not looking good. I'll be honest. It's really not looking good.
It's not. It's looking very, very difficult right now. I mean, I just look at what we've got, and I will have serious questions for the manager if he puts in Nkunku as a 9 again and does no changing of the system. I will seriously be looking at him and having questions as why are you doing that? Because you've openly admitted he's not a number 9. We've seen it multiple times this season. Unless it's the Conference League against nobodies, this guy does not suit the system playing as a number 9 and offers nothing. You're essentially sending the team out a man down with this system as in Nkunku as a 9. So if I see Nkunku as a 9 on Saturday, I'm going to have serious questions for the manager because you can try something different. I'm not saying that's going to work, but we absolutely know the Nkunku thing doesn't work. So I'll have more respect for you if you try something different and it doesn't pay off rather than trying the same thing that we know doesn't work. I mean, I don't know about you, mate, but I actually think he's going to play Nkunku in the same role again.
I think I'll go one further. I don't think it matters full stop because I think you saw against Brighton in the league, we did actually do something different. Like for the majority of the game, it was Palmer as a false 9 and then Nkunku as the 10. He was the one dropping deeper and it looked terrible then because I just don't think Nkunku fits, like regardless of where he plays. Outside of maybe left wing, because I know he was decent against City and like he looked all right against, was it West Ham he came on again in the left wing or something?
Yeah.
Right. Outside of those games, like he's just looked terrible when he's played in this team. It doesn't matter whether he's played 10, 9, or wherever. He's just looked bad. And I think I'm not saying he's a bad player, and I still maintain he's not. And I think he'd go to Bayern and smash it, or he'd go PSG and smash it. Like he just doesn't fit in the system, and he ultimately I don't think fits this league really. Like not the physicality aspect at least. So yeah, he just doesn't fit. And that's why I say ultimately I don't think him being in this team is helpful. Like you said, I think we start basically with 10 men. And it's just it doesn't work. And then even if we do change it and do what we did against Brighton, we saw what happened with Palmer. False nine, he's just limited. There's no movement
when
from
he
him.
played false nine away at Middlesbrough in the first leg of the cup.
We lost 1-0
last season. We lost 1-0. He offered nothing. Palmer at false nine don't work. So you either play one of the academy kids, which is not going to happen, or you put a Neto or a Sancho there, because Nkunku and Palmer there doesn't work. So one of those two has to go there. And then you can play Palmer on the right, you can play Neto or Sancho left, and you play Nkunku in the number 10 position or whatever it might be. One thing that I think can change and should change and could make a difference, this inverting fullbacks thing needs to stop. It's not working. I think it's affecting the way that our wingers are playing. When Cucurella, by the way, inverting into midfield, fantastic. Really suits him. He does a good job. The issue is, though, is you take away all of Gusto's threat or James's threat down the right-hand side, because they then tuck in as a right centre-back in the 3, and you're having no overlap on the right-hand side with the fullback for the winger. Everything's inside. Everything's going for the middle of the pitch. And I don't want Cucurella, as much as I like him, I don't want him playing in like a pseudo number 10 role and picking the ball up. There was one point against Brighton where Cucurella was in the box waiting for a cross in the Brighton box. We don't need this. Like, if you're going to, why can't we just play traditional fullbacks, normal left back, normal right back? Cucurella, I say, is not the best getting forward, but he's got better at getting forward. Gusto and James, part of their strongest thing is getting forward, putting balls into the box, offering an overlap. And you can also double up on the fullback on one side if you've got that overlap on the outside from the fullback, but everything's through the middle of the pitch and it's also congested and it's not working. I'm not saying that if we scrap the inverting, we'd suddenly start winning again. But for me, the inverting is causing us issues at the moment.
It is, but I think this comes back to what I said earlier we've got a manager who's really set in his ways and has one way of playing, and it's like this is ultimately what we've gone for, and I don't expect him to change. And ultimately, as much as we might want him to change, there's probably a reason he sticks with what he's set in his ways and whatnot and stubborn. But he's kind of changed it in parts even outside of that, and I think it's just, even if we were to not invert the fullbacks, I actually don't even know if that would make a difference of how our team is right now. He should still try it 100%. At least do it on the right hand side, for example. So have Reece play further up, have him be the overlapping guy, and then you have Cucurella as the centre back in the 3 or whatever.
He could do a left back in a 3, Cucurella. I know it's not his best
100%,
position, but that's better than Gusto certainly better than Gusto playing right side of a 3.
I think that should ultimately, like I said at the start of the season and even during the season, I think that's ultimately where his best position should be, because I think you then have James being, when he plays and he's fit, either the inverting centre fullback, which I think he can do, or you have him play the overlapping fullback, and then when everyone's fit, you can potentially have Palmer out on the right and he inverts into midfield, and then you get an actual number 10 with him, which should at this point have been Felix, but to be fair, at this point, I'd have Sancho at the 10 when everyone's fit with him. You have those two, and then put Neto out on the left wing and Jackson up front. But yeah, there's so many ways you could have that. But yeah, he needs to try something different, but I don't think he will. And ultimately, I don't even know if we've got the pieces for him to try something new, because I don't think if you did have Reece as the overlapping fullback, that still means that it's whether it's George or Neto on that right-hand side, they then have to move inside more, and I don't know whether either of them, based on what we've seen so far, would be able to make a difference.
What are your thoughts? Someone's in the chat's mentioned it. What are your thoughts on maybe Achimpong coming back in?
I'd love it, man. I think that's the one thing that Maresca's done for me this season that I've been vehemently against. There's been question marks I've had here and there about certain players playing or certain guys not playing or whatever. The Josh situation, I think that's wrong what's happened. This is a guy who played really well whenever he was asked to play, made no mistakes. Even the Bournemouth mistake, quote unquote, I don't blame him. He did the right thing against Semenyo. and then Sanchez just decided to not save the ball. And since then, we haven't seen him. He's been on the bench, hasn't played for the under-21s the other day with Anselmino.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and Anselmino, fantastic. I'm so glad we kept Anselmino instead of sending him on loan to Marseille. Great job. Yeah, like, it's a shame because he looks like he's been the one guy, like, even ahead of George. Like, I think George has been decent when he's played, but you can tell there's a little bit of rustiness, or there's a little bit of, like, he's a bit green around the edges, more rough around the edges. With Achimpong, he looks like he can come into this back line and actually, like, he'll make mistakes, obviously, because he's 18, but he looks like he is the closest youth player we have currently in the squad to making the step up and being a regular. And it kind of sucks to see that he's been relegated to this spot because of one perceived mistake.
I do find it strange how Achimpong started against Crystal Palace, done really well. Started against Bournemouth, where I actually thought he had a decent game. All right, he gets slightly spun for the Semenyo goal, but no mistake any worse than any other defender has made multiple times in the team this season. And yet, he's dropped out of the team suddenly. I'm not saying he should be playing every single week, but it's very strange how... Mate, has he played since the Bournemouth game?
Nope.
When was that? That was in January, wasn't it? Let me check when he last played. But are you surprised that suddenly, like, because this is the worst thing for a young player, in for a couple of games, then you disappear, then you're playing in the under-21s. Why is he playing in the 21s? Like,
no idea. That was over a month ago. He's missed 5 games since.
And he's not even come on as a sub, has he?
No, he's been on the bench in a lot of those games, or even most of those games, I think. But yeah, it's just weird. And what makes it worse, like you said, we've got players who... I'm sorry, if I see Colwell after his performance against Brighton, if I see Colwell touch the pitch against Villa...
But the thing is, we know he's starting.
But this goes back to your point of, like, I've watched him make 2 mistakes for 2 of the goals we conceded against Brighton, where we lost 3-0.
And a mistake against West Ham as well.
And against West Ham, and against City. He's made a mistake in the last 3 games he's played. And so, yeah, he's going to play, and then we have to have this question marks again, because I don't know why he gets special treatment. And this is a guy I've defended a lot, because I think he started the season really well. Even when Fofana didn't start, I thought he was performing. But then, since Fofana's injury, he is off a cliff. Like, he
has fallen off quite a lot. I think that I like Colwell, but I think he's overrated by a lot of the fan base. And what people also need to remember as well, though, he's only 21. A lot of people speak about him like he's 25, 26. He would benefit immensely. I think I've said this to you before. I said it to someone else. I think I can't guarantee it, but I think there's a very good chance that if Colwell was playing alongside Thiago Silva this season, he's not making anywhere near as many mistakes as he has done so far. You know, we've seen it multiple times. You look so much better when you play alongside someone better than you. Cahill was a very good centre-half, but playing alongside John Terry made him look a much better centre-half than he actually was. He wasn't bad, by the way, but it made him look better than he was. Badiashile playing alongside Thiago Silva in his first 6 months.
And I agree with you, and I think even if he makes the same mistakes, he's at least got someone behind him who's going to be able to clean them up better, in terms of going to be able to read it a bit better. Whereas now he's playing with Tosin and Chalobah and Fofana, and it's like most of these guys are also either young or they're not really your leader type centre backs, where it's like they're going to read the game as well as Silva does, because like most centre backs don't. I mean, he's one of the best in his generation at doing that. But yeah, this is ultimately the problem that we keep coming back to, and it's like the way this squad's been put together. And I agree, is as bad as he's been, and as much as I'm giving up on him slowly because of his mentality at the moment, I think he probably makes less mistakes, or at least his mistakes are less costly if we do have someone like a Silva or a Terry or even a Cahill at this point, or a Rudiger next to him who can clean up his mistakes.
Just back to the Achimpong thing, though. Like, for me personally, centre-back partnership is not something you want to be constantly chopping and changing. Regardless if guys are making mistakes. I think Maresca now needs to draw a line in the sand and say, barring injuries, this is my centre-back partnership for the rest of the season. And this is what I'm going with. Conference League may be different, but certainly in the league, I don't want to see the partnership change week to week or change every other week. I just think centre-back's so important. The partnership there, just the whole back four as a unit in general. And 5 of you include the goalkeeper. So if your partnership is Colwell and Chalobah, whether they're playing well or whether people like it, you go and stick with that. Like Achimpong, I think he should play more. Do I think he should be the first choice pairing for the remainder of the season? No, I probably don't think that. But I still feel that Chelsea basically made Achimpong a load of promises they can't keep to get him to sign a contract. And the cynic in me thinks they're going to sell him in the summer or they'll sell him in summer 27. I still don't see, personally, the long-term pathway for Achimpong in the first team. Because Gusto and James, there's no room at right back if those two stay fit, because they're 21 and 25. At centre-back, you're going to have Colwell, Fofana. Let's say we sign let's say we sign Mark Gurhey in the summer. That's a 3. Maybe you keep Badiashile, that's 4, and maybe Vega's a 5th. Is there room for regular minutes at centre-back? Maybe more so than right-back, but not guarantee of the regular minutes that he'd be looking for. So I look at it and I sort of think, what's convinced him to sign? Because for me, I personally don't see that clear of a pathway for him.
Apparently it was, I think the report said it was Maresca had a lot to do with it, which is interesting now.
Then he doesn't play him.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it's weird. No, I understand the cynicism in thinking he'll get sold, and I'm not quite there, but like I could see it happening, but I just don't know at the moment, because I just don't know who ends up going, who ends up staying. Because like I would have told you that 2 months ago that Vega probably would have been here for 2-3 years, but he probably gets sold in the summer now.
Would you keep Vega, by the way? Because
I would in the summer. At this point, if the season continues, how's it going in terms of defenders? I would in the summer keep Vega, play him left centre back, and I'd sell Cole.
Do you think look? I think Vega is good enough to be a centre back for Chelsea. Maybe not a starting centre back, but he's certainly good enough to be a third choice, maybe, or a fourth. Like, he's good enough to be part of the rotational pool for centre backs. Plus, he can play left back. Plus, he can play in midfield if needed. Do you think he's good? Like the way that you see him slot into that Juventus team and play at centre back and do a really good job. I'm not saying he's been misprofiled, by the way, because he wasn't signed to be a centre back. He was signed predominantly to be backup left back. I think he played centre back away at Panathinaikos in the Conference League. Looked quite good. Again, difficult to read too much into that. But if you're putting together a pool of centre backs next season for Chelsea, are you including Renato Vega in that?
I would, just because I think this season will tell a lot, and I understand it's a different league and it's going to be all those changes and whatnot. But I think he was always like, he could have played centre back here, like under different circumstances. I think even when he was playing as the left centre back in a 3, when people would invert, he always looked good, I thought. And yeah, as I said, like I think if things continue, like if Cole continues to make the same mistakes and continues to have the same mentality he does after making those mistakes as he's doing now, I would sell him. I think I'd sell Badiashile anyway, but like you said, I'd have Vega as depending on who else we were to sign. I'd have him as either like the starter next to a Gurhey, depending on who else leaves, or like I'd have him as the backup behind a Gurhey if you have Gurhey and Tosin as the centre back partnership going forward or whatever. But yeah, like I'd certainly have him around, because like that's a guy who I think is able to defend wide areas better than some of our centre backs, is able to defend aerially better than some of our centre backs, is able to defend, is more aggressive in terms of closing players down than some of our centre backs. And so, yeah, I think I would, especially if it continues how it's been going.
Mate, for me in the summer, right, I actually would sign 2 centre backs.
Oh, I would as well.
Because I think, if we're being honest here, Badiashile, I think, will probably go. I think Chalobah will be sold as well. And I think there's a chance that Tosin might leave. I think there's a chance 3 centre backs could leave.
Oh, if I would sign 2 minimum, because I'm selling all of our centre backs bar Tosin and Vega. No, Fofana I'd sell as well. The only way I wouldn't sell Fofana is if you make him the backup, like the third choice off the
For
bench.
me, in the summer, in my ideal situation, right? Forget whatever centre backs are leaving. I still think we need two. I would sign Mark Guehi and I'd sign Dean Huijsen from Bournemouth. I'd sign those two. And then for me, the pool would be Guehi, Huijsen, Colwell, Fofana, and then Vega as a utility fifth option. I think that's a good pool of centre backs. Or maybe instead of Huijsen, maybe you go for Zabani instead, the other Bournemouth centre half. But I mean, we need a leader in the back line. Do you think Mark Guehi ticks that leader of the back line profile, gives that experience, gives that leadership? Would you be happy with that being like the quote unquote main centre back signing?
Yes, like to a point. I think he ticks the most of the boxes we're looking for in a centre back. Only one he doesn't tick is the aerial presence, but I think everything else he does. And I think if you get the best version of Guehi, which we saw in the Euros, like you're getting a top centre back. There are other centre backs I'd get instead of him, but there are also centre backs I know this ownership group, at least in this current model, will never sign. So yeah, of all the ones we've looked at, he's probably the best option. I don't want Huijsen. Zabani I'd take, but again, he'd have to be with a Guehi. And yeah, and the other options we've been linked with, I'm not massive fans of. And yeah, as I said, like ultimately, we just got to rework this centre back core because, like I said, I think this I need to call him disaster. Disasi's gone
as well. We've got to get rid of him as well. Yeah,
he's got to go. I think Badiashil's got to go for two reasons. I think number one, we don't even know if he's good enough. Number two, these injury issues, like you can maybe get away with it if you're Fofana and like you're potentially our best centre back when fit, but you can't get away with it when you're Badiashil. He needs to go. Cole, like I said, if he continues the same trajectory, I'm selling him. Tosin I'd keep by purely based on the fact that you can't get three new centre backs in a season, or in summer. Fofana I'd sell again, like just because the injury concerns for me, he can't be a starter, and if he's not a starter on 200k a week, like I don't want to do the whole wage bill thing because I think that's another issue, and I think it's nonsense. But for me, you can't give someone that's that injury prone and that much of a liability and is going to be a backup for most season at centre back. So it's not like midfield, for example, or up front. Like there's a lot more rotation that happens. Centre back, not what the rotation we're seeing at the moment is not really normal. And I think a lot of that's down to injuries. For me, you can't have him on the bench, so I'd sell him.
What's mad as well, mate, is like some areas of the squad we've invested well in. The amount of money we've spent on centre backs and we're in such a mess defensively is mind-boggling. I always reference Zabani and Huijsen. Bournemouth signed both of those players for less than £50 million. We spent 70 mil on Badiashile and Disasi.
I'll go on further. They signed both of those guys for less than we bought Disasi.
Yeah, and you know, Milos Kerkez was a reasonably cheap signing as well. I mean, it's when you look at the way the money's been invested from a defensive standpoint, it's dreadful. That, and I agree with you, mate. The defensive unit, particularly from a centre back point of view, needs a complete rethink. We need to sell at least 3 centre backs in the summer, get a couple in. We also need to sign a left back. Now, people can sell Renato Vegas to back up left back. I want a specialist in that position. I don't know who that guy's going to be. If he went to get Milos Kerkez, fine. But would he accept being a backup? I don't know. But I think we need a specialist left back, and I think we need 2 centre backs. And then, like, sort of moving to midfield, like you look at that, and Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, fine. Lavia can't stay fit. We need a number 6. Let's say that Andre Santos comes back. I think Ugachukwu gets sold, and then can you really go in with Lavia, Santos, Caicedo, Enzo? I think you need one more because you can't rely on Lavia to stay fit.
I think midfield's the one area where we're fine because like you have the core you need. Like the core that we should have is the 3 we have currently, Santos and Ugachukwu. Like somehow they've managed to you somehow like some way managed to stumble on a good core of midfielders. Like fair play, you've managed to fix one area potentially. Because then you've got Lavia who's potentially injury prone, and even Lavia, like I think you can have a midfield 4, and then you can have a 5th be like
Vega be a fifth.
like you can have it. Yeah, you could have a fifth where it's like it could be filled by a Vega or a Raksaki or whoever, right? If you sell Lavia, like I think those four, none of them are injury prone and they're all healthy at the moment. All healthy enough that I think they could be rotated. I think the only reason we say we need five is because one of them is Lavia, but you can sell him. Like that's a good move for four. But I agree with you. Leslie probably gets sold, and then you then got to look for another six again, which is stupid because you literally have one that's actually performing in the Premier League.
Again, the cynical side of me, and people say, "Oh no, it's not going to happen. It's this, it's that." You know, it's he's going to be a key part of the squad next season. I am not going to believe that Andre Santos is going to be a key part of the squad next season until I see him in a Chelsea shirt after the transfer window is closed. Because we already know that top clubs are looking at him. We spent 13 million quid on him, and we know the way that this ownership operates. If an offer of, say, 50 or 60 million pounds came in for Andre Santos, we know they're not saying no.
Yeah, I agree. Like I understand the cynicism, and there's a small niggling feeling in the back of my mind that like I think that could happen. I don't think it will. I do think he will be kept, but I understand the concerns, and I am having that thought of like, say Bayern come in with, like you said, a 50, 60 million bid, which is feasible considering the season he's having and considering the revamp Bayern need in their midfield.
And his age as well. He's what, 20, 21 or whatever he is.
And Bayern have been they've done this with a multitude of players, whether that be Tell. Obviously, it didn't really work out, but they've done that with Tell. They've done that with Nabry at the time. They've done that with a young guy out of New Zealand, I think it is. Like they're just going and buying these young guys. I could see it happening, and then if they get an offer of 50, 60 million, like that's a huge profit in their eyes.
And I suppose if we miss out on the Champions League as well, you know, maybe some players are going to have to be sold to cover up that revenue gap. And I mean, how good do you think Santos could be in this Chelsea team? Obviously, he's doing exceptionally well in Strasbourg in Liga. It's a different league. The Premier League's totally different. He hasn't actually kicked a ball for us competitively yet. Do you think he can be a difference maker for us in midfield? Do you see him starting regularly? I don't think he start. I think he'll start games, but he won't be a regular starter in my view.
I think he could be. I think he's got the ability and the profile to become one of the best midfielders in the world. And I think with Liga, and I think he's playing in a league that, even though it's slightly different, it's the most comparable league in terms of like physicality and everything to the Premier League, and he's smashing it. So I think there's an easy transition there, and I genuinely think he's got the potential and the ability, and not even just potential. Like he's already shown he's arguably the best midfielder in that league.
He's played very well. He's right up there, the top performers.
I think he is potentially, like, if he plays regularly, he's like what 2 years, or I think 2 years away from being in the similar position to like your Caicedos are. Like genuinely, I think he's like that close, and that's why I think it would be a mistake. But I don't know. I don't know whether they would.
I hope they wouldn't, but the fact, like, you know, it can't be ruled out, and it wouldn't, and it as a bigger disappointment and an upset it would be. It can't be ruled out. You know, they've got previous. We know it.
We are talking about someone here who I haven't seen too much of him, but like speaking to those that have, we're talking about someone here who is on the cusp, again, in a couple of years' time, of being a complete midfielder, like being able to do everything outside of maybe the long passes, which I'll be real, in this system, I don't really care. We don't really do that, especially like depending on if Enzo's going to be here in that time. But like we're talking about a guy who potentially could have a better all-round game than Caicedo, and Caicedo's already great, but you see it in this system is that there are some things he lacks, especially towards the attacking end of the pitch.
Santos got goal for him.
Yeah, Santos has that. Plus, he has the ground coverage and he has the defensive ability.
But he can be an 8 or a 6. He's a proper midfielder, you know, that does both. Box to box, can score, it's good in the air, he's physical, can cover ground, tackle. Like, this is the sort of player that you probably spend 60 or 70 million pounds to sign. You can guarantee, right, if we didn't own Santos, we'd be looking to buy him for that money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of thinking, maybe he's gonna go. But I don't know. Look, I think midfield is pretty set. Defense needs a revamp. The attack needs a bit of a revamp as well. I mean, just last 5 minutes or so, mate. Like looking forward with the attack. I mean, look, a centre forward needs to come in. Let's presume that Mudrik's out the picture. We don't know what's going to happen with him. But let's just presume that he's out the picture. You've got Esteval Willian coming in. You've got Kendry Paez coming in. I personally feel that Paez will go out on loan. I wouldn't be adverse to Esteval getting a loan and playing some regular minutes in a European top 5 league. I think it's way too much pressure for this young kid to have a life-changing move from Brazil to then just expect him to go and deliver in the Premier League at Chelsea. When I say this, mate, I think we could need to sign 2 wingers this summer. And I'm not even including Esteval in that. I think we definitely need one. Because I wouldn't be surprised if Noni left in the summer either.
If Noni leaves, we need 2. But I think based on what we've heard, and again, this may change, but based on what we've heard, I think the plan is for Paez to go out on loan to Strasbourg.
Yeah, I think Paez will go on loan, yeah.
I think that might have already been even agreed. Esteval apparently is going to come and be with the first team, which that's fine. The expectations on him need to, as much as I think, again, he could be great, I think the expectations, especially from a production side, need to be tempered. If he gets 6-7 goals in the league, that's a massive positive for me. That's half what he got in the Brazilian league last season. And yeah, I agree. I think we need at least one winger because I think we need a goal-scoring winger on the left-hand side.
Yeah,
and
it has to be a goal scorer, yeah.
When I say a goal-scoring winger, I'm not talking a guy like Garnacho or Tell
Would you look at someone like a Lookman potentially?
Potentially. I don't even know if Lookman would suit. The issue with this squad is I'm saying I want a goal scoring winger, and I do, but I'm looking at the way we play, and I don't even know if a goal scoring winger fixes us from a winger perspective. But yeah, I'd want someone who's a bit more orientated to goal scoring. The perfect candidate for me would have been the guy that's currently playing. Well, either one of the 2 guys that's playing in PSG at the moment.
Yeah, or Maresca or Barcola. Like we were linked with Barcola. Was it the Poch summer? I think it was.
Yeah, we were linked with him before he went to PSG. Yeah. No, it was the summer. It was last summer, not the one just gone. The one before when we got Palmer.
Yeah. So it was the Poch. Yeah. So some of that Poch was obviously just taken over. I mean, look, this is a good point as well. At the time, we laughed about it, but Gordon would have been good for us. You know, remember when we linked with him under Tuchel and sort of, I mean, I'll hold my hands up. I wasn't that keen on it, but
I wasn't either.
And hindsight's, you know, a great thing, but Gordon could have been decent for this team on that left-hand side.
He potentially could have been, but I also think there's a different level of pressure playing for Newcastle and playing for Chelsea. And I don't know whether he'd hit the same heights because I think even at Everton at the time, like that Newcastle move was like he was kind of the main man at Everton, but I think that's more because he came from the academy. I think at the time he was wearing the number 10 potentially, and he wasn't in the best form, and there was a lot of issues around his kind of end at Everton. So I don't know if that would have been the right move still, but yeah, like there have been players there available that we could have signed and we could have gone for, and are still available, and you could test the waters with. And it's like for example, if I'm the club, for example, right, in the summer, they love these swap deals, quote unquote. I'm going to PSG and I'm going, we'll give you Nkunku plus some cash and for Barcola. What do you say? Because I think that's a guy in Nkunku. They're already playing with a false 9 at the moment. It's Dembele at the moment playing as a false 9 striker or whatever.
Sometimes Barcola plays there. It's like, I mean, Kvaratskhelia could maybe play there. Do you know what? I wouldn't be surprised, mate, if we went back in for Samu in the summer.
If we do, I'm fine with that as well, because like as long as they go and try and get someone that's not Delap and not Sesko, Christ, and they go and try and address the areas properly. But like I'm not like the Garnachos and the tails and this, like that's not addressing it properly, and it's like
absolutely not.
Yeah, we've got to actually address it properly, and like we talked about, left wing, Mudrik's gone, whether he's banned, contract termination, whatever, he's finished. You need to go and get someone on that left-hand side. If Madueke gets sold, fine. If he gets sold, kudos. If we're selling Madueke, I'm get Kudus. Go and get Kudus. That's an upgrade for me, and I'm starting him ahead of Pedro Neto.
Yeah, but the winger market.
Madueke and replacing him with Esteval for me right now. Not talking about what can happen in the future. Right now, that's an upgrade.
That's
No,
not that is a downgrade purely based on the fact that Madueke is at least proven in the league and does give you some sort of output. Esteval is not gonna give
at
you
18,
that.
I'm not expecting him to. Like I said, if he hits 7 goals, that's half what he hit in the Brazilian league last season. 7 goals will be Madueke's current league total, which people are saying still isn't good enough.
I'm just wondering where all these guys fit in, because they don't.
I don't know. I could not.
And they don't fit in, and that's like another issue with it, isn't it? Is it that these guys actually don't all fit in? Again, there's going to have to be more moving around. We're going to need to acquire another club in the multi-club model. We're going to have to sell players to make room for the ones that are coming in. Like, talking to centre backs, didn't even mention it. Mamadou Sarr is going to arrive from Strasbourg. Is he going to be part of the pool? Is he going to be loaned out somewhere? What happens with him? He's not going to be loaned back to Strasbourg again. So
that would.
So where does he go? Does he come in? Like, what happens with him? You've got Anselmino. This is my point, right? So you signed Anselmino, who's 19. You've then gone and signed Mamadou Sarr, who's also 19.
We're looking at Hussein, who's 19.
We're looking at Hussein, who's 19. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, why did you need Sarr when you've got Anselmino? Why?
Bro, we've got so many players in the same position. They're in the same age bracket. Like, they can't all play together.
No, and this is again another reason when you're putting together a squad, like no one puts together a squad where everyone's basically the same age.
No, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. It's like I said, like you have you have 1 or 2 young players, like you'll have 1 young centre back, maybe 1 young midfielder, 1 young attacker. Like, we've got the entire team just full of 19 to 21-year-olds, and like. Even Colwell, right? Like we said, he's 21. I put him in a similar age bracket to these guys, like your Sars and your what's it called? Your Sars and your
Anselmino. So he's only 2 years older.
Yeah, it's only 2 years, and like it's not exactly like 2 years at centre back, especially. It's not exactly that old. Like, so yeah, it's just
I mean,
nuts.
I forgot about him. Like, what's the Anselmino and Sarr? What's the plan for these guys? Because they're both not going to be part of the squad. I don't even think one of them will be part of the squad next season. I suspect Anselmino will go on loan to Strasbourg. And for Sarr, I've got absolutely no idea. No idea whatsoever what the plan is.
Nope. I've just looked as well.
He's not going to play much here.
We talked about him earlier as well, and I think this maybe goes back to what you said about him being sold. Achimpong's 18 as well, and he's another one that's been playing centre-back for us.
Yeah, exactly. You've got 2 more centre-backs in Anselmino and this Sarr geezer. That pushes him... And that's 2 more players for Achimpong to be competing for minutes with. There is no pathway for him here. I'm sorry. I could be wrong. It could turn out to be wrong. But right now I'm looking at it. There's no pathway for the kid. There's none.
There isn't. And I'm looking as well, like you go into other positions. We bought Leslie, who's 20 now currently, and we just signed that Amugu kid who's 19. They're basically in the same age bracket.
Yeah, and they're basically the same. Well, not quite the same. Amugu's kind of a 6 and an 8. I think Ugochukwu could play as an 8. To be honest, he was scoring goals in pre-season. He could maybe do that.
Well, that's fair. But then we've also got Lavia, who's 21, who plays as a 6/8.
Yeah,
And then we've got Santos, who's in the same age bracket and is a 6/8.
But this sums us up perfectly. We're just throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks. Palmer stuck, but for every Palmer, which is a once in a sort of not generation, but like a once in a blue moon sort of type signing, you're going to get a lot of very average signings. And that's exactly what we've got. Exactly what we've got. A lot of very average signings. But yeah, we're going to round it out there. I don't know what happened to Kev tonight. He was meant to be here, but he didn't turn up. But there we go. Scott, thanks for your time as always, bro. It's great to catch up. Guys, make sure you subscribe to Chelsea Fan TV. Smash the likes on the way out. Enjoy the rest of your day. Alex will be back with the lunchtime show tomorrow at 1 p.m. So stay tuned for that. We've got a Conference League draw as well. So yeah, guys, enjoy the rest of your evening and catch you all again soon.